Film fans YouTube, hello and welcome back to the channel. I am Josh, the Movie Apprentice, and today I am looking at Mother's Instinct, directed by Benoit, Delhomme, and starring Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, Anders Danielson Lai, and Caroline Lagerfelt. Hathaway and Chastain play a suburban couple in the 60s that have the perfect successful husbands, the perfect children, and the perfect next-door neighbor best friend. But after a tragedy befalls one of the two women's children, it starts a cycle of events filled with guilt, paranoia, and delusion. Before I get into my review, if you like what you're seeing on our channel, click the like button and subscribe for more video reviews like it's coming all the time. But without further ado, let's get right into this review. So this is based on a book and is actually the second filmic adaptation of this book, as there was another one that came out in 2018 as well. But this was fronted by Jessica Chastain and Anne Hathaway, who are two absolute knockouts, ex-Oscar winners. So you are guaranteed some really good performances within this movie, and both women knock it out of the park. Their dynamic, from the paranoia to the guilt to the suspicion of each other, that slow escalation throughout the film was a very interesting watch. Now, is this a perfect film? Not by any stretch of the imagination. There are definitely certain contrivances and conveniences that only really work because of the time period this is set in. We are able to establish that this is set in the 1960s, as there is a mention of the space race that occurs within the early stages of the film. So it's very much the old school suburban lifestyle. Whilst the movie's inciting incident comes about in a contriving manner, one thing that's really enjoyable as a viewer is that it is never clear throughout the runtime where this is going to go. On the one side, we have Alice, who is paranoid at a friend getting a bit too close to her son, and the weird coincidences that take place over the course of the film that she believes are directly as the result of her friend's interference. On the flip side, we have Celine, who is grieving heavily from the loss of her son and is getting way too attached to her friend's son. We also don't know if that is her grieving process and if she is struggling to move on from her other child that unfortunately has the accident in the early stages of the movie. The two women definitely work well off each other, and you can see the quality on screen when these two are performing opposite each other's. Obviously, there are other actors within this movie, but these two are very much the wheel that keeps the ship steady. However, I will say that the character of Theo started to become really annoying. Theo is Alice's kid, who develops a close friendship with Celine throughout the film. And I'm just going to say, without spoiling anything, that if people thought the Fremen were too willing to be manipulated and indoctrinated after centuries by the Reverend Mothers, then Theo is a whole nother level. He is way too willing to drink the Kool-Aid. And whilst I know he is a child, so children are very easily susceptible and easy to manipulate, it still feels very strange that he's getting manipulated one scene, but then being this moody, unresponsive kid the next. This is a kid that's 8 or 9 years old. So one decision that he makes about 2/3 of the way through the film feels very far-fetched and very silly. When the film does show its hand, I won't say it derails the film in any stretch of the imagination, but I will say I would have quite liked it to be open-ended. Now, obviously, the book would have given the ending as is, and this would have been adapted really well. So it's not something I can give too much of a negative to. However, it feels like once the revelations happen, it makes one character suddenly shift. It's a little bit like in the film Get Out, where it turns out that Rose has been a villain the whole time, and she suddenly turns into this over-the-top villain in a way. Same thing kind of applies here, and there is a massive plot hole within the final section of the movie that leaves the ending a little far-fetched to me, similar to Saltburn. When I thought about it for a couple of minutes, even within the late 60s, you would think that there would be more questions raised at the conclusion. That is all I'm going to say about that. Mother's Instinct is a film that is shot really well. The dialogue is quite nice. The mystery element for the first 2/3 to 3/4 of the movie is a really good watch, and it is just an absolute joy to watch Jessica Chastain and then Hathaway bounce off each other as these friends, sometimes enemies, that are constantly weighing each other up. Alice's paranoia that is portrayed by Chastain is the camel that carries the load of this movie, and Anne Hathaway's performance as this vulnerable woman going through a great grieving process is absolutely brilliant as well. You really couldn't compare the two. They both rub off each other really well, and it makes this an engaging watch. However, some lackluster side characters, a character that was very irritating to me, as well as the final 10 to 15 minutes and the resolution of the whole film, felt like an overall letdown for me. Before I get into my grade, again, if you like what you're seeing on the channel, I've enjoyed what you've seen so far, click that like button and subscribe for more video reviews like this coming all the time. But without further ado, let's grade this. Mother's Instinct is carried by two knockout performances from Hathaway and Chastain. There are side characters that are irritating, but it is shot really well, and the screenplay is really solid. It is a nice mystery to sit back and enjoy and just absorb. No matter what side you're picking, you could also see things from the other woman's perspective. So there was a nice balance that was achieved within the film itself. However, once the definitive shift of that balance comes in the latter half of the movie, the film starts to spiral just a tiny bit, and the catalyst of the movie that acts as the conduit for the whole process and the whole motivation behind these two characters makes some really silly decisions that feel very far-fetched on my part. So I'm gonna have to say that overall, Mother's Instinct is an okay cup of tea. So Mother's Instinct, have you seen it? If you have, them, you for down in the comments below. Coming up on the channel, gonna do a review of Immaculate, and we have Godzilla vs. Kong coming out over the weekend as well. So stay tuned for that. But until next time, everybody, I am Josh. I have been Movie Apprentice, and I'll see you all in the next video.